Hello and welcome again to another lecture in Journalism and the Law. I'm Professor Harper, and today I'm going to talk about the U.S. Constitution, arguably the most important document in the history of the United States. And it's really divided into several important sections or articles. And the first one deals with the legislative branch, which is Section 1. And in Article 1, Section 1, it reads that all legislative powers are granted to the Congress of the United States, and it creates the Senate and House of Representatives. Now, at that time, representatives in the House had to be at least 25, had to be a citizen of the United States for 7 years, and live in the state that they represent. Senators had to be 30 years old and a citizen for 9 years. Those age requirements have increased over time. In Section 8, it basically talks about what the legislature has the power to do. And at the time, the idea was to create three parts of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. But because legislative became Article 1, it's generally thought that the Congress was supposed to have the most power. Now that's changed over time, where Congress still has a lot of power, but the executive branch has become more dominant and the judicial branch has become more active. But here in Section 8 it says that the Congress shall make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States. Now, here are several important issues that were restricted in Section 9 of Article 1, which, first of all, the migration or importation of people shall not be prohibited but can be taxed. Okay, this is a very controversial part of the Constitution because it allowed slavery to continue. At the time, it was thought that if the new Union of States tried to solve the slavery problem, that it would split into North and South. As a result of this decision, it led to the Civil War and many problems with respect to slavery. Also in Section 9 it said that habeas corpus shall not be suspended in most cases. That meant that people had to be given the ability to have their day in court. Okay, habeas corpus literally means bring the body, so that the courts will say you have to take someone out of prison, bring them to the court, and allow for their day in court. There can be no ex post facto laws. What that means is the Congress cannot pass a law today and say, okay, this now applies to everyone in the past 10 years. When a law is passed, it starts at that date and then moves forward. And an important thing was that Section 9 also prevented the titles of nobility. The United States had just fought a war with King George of Britain, and so therefore the notion of a king, queen, or whatever were not to be included in this new government. The legislative branch also had two important clauses. One is called the Commerce Clause, and the other one is called the Necessary and Proper Clause. Okay, so the Commerce Clause basically said the Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations, among states, and with Indian tribes. This basically allowed, as we move along, to have a central government have more power over the way in which business was conducted, how laws would be applied from the federal government to the states. And the Necessary and Proper Clause essentially said that the Congress shall make all laws which are necessary and proper to carry into execution what was stated in the overall structure of the Constitution. So the Constitution was a plan to create a government, but it didn't spell out all of the details. It left that execution to the Congress. And so therefore it allowed for the expansion of government by creating more laws and by adding to the overall structure that was created by the Constitution. Now, the executive branch was spelled out fairly specifically in the U.S. Constitution, but it's grown in terms of its size and in its power. There was a battle between the Federalists, who wanted more central control of government from a national basis, to do a number of things, to create a central bank, for business purposes, to create a national army so that you didn't have state militias coming together to fight wars. And so in the executive branch, it essentially created the presidency and the vice president, and that they would serve identical 4-year terms. Okay, initially, the way that the president and the vice president were chosen is that they were chosen by electors from the U.S. Congress. That was changed by the 12th Amendment to the Constitution with the Electoral College, where people are elected and by a vote. Initially, they were chosen by the state legislatures. Now it's by popular vote, and then they go to cast a ballot, so that they meet after a national election and vote for president and vice president. So the election that will happen each November does not actually elect a president and vice president. Those elections choose people who will go to the Electoral College and then cast ballots. Now, the judicial branch really did not have a broad overview in the U.S. Constitution. What the Article 3 essentially said, that it in the Constitution authorized the establishment of only one Supreme Court, but it doesn't set the number of justices who must be appointed to it, how long they will serve. It doesn't set up a judiciary for the rest of the federal government. It basically said, okay, we know that there has to be a Supreme Court, but then you folks figure it out from here. Okay. There was a big fight over whether there should be additional rights that went along with the U.S. Constitution. And essentially, there was a faction headed by Alexander Hamilton, and he said, well, the Constitution says what it says. We don't need to specify other elements of that. Okay, there's an amendment process which is included in the U.S. Constitution. And the problem that Hamilton saw was that if the government says, okay, you have the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of press, religion, speech, the ability to demonstrate against the government. If the government grants these rights, then the government can also take them away. Now, he didn't win the day. James Madison was a proponent of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, because he thought that it was necessary to spell these out to get enough states to ratify the U.S. Constitution. And Madison won the day. The 10 amendments were sent out for a vote, and this enabled the U.S. Constitution to pass, as well as the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights. Now, in this class, we're basically going to be dealing with Article 1 most of the time, which deals with the issues of religion, free speech, free press, the right to demonstrate and assemble, and to ask the government to fix things. Okay, but we'll also be dealing with the 4th, 5th, and 6th amendments, which basically deal with the right of people to privacy in Article 4, and 5 and 6 deal with the rights of people when it comes to legal affairs and the representation by counsel and to have a day in court. So that's all for now, and we'll see you online. Thanks very much.